Call the Tuesday, August 17th Common Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Olson.
Here.
Alderman Mayor.
Here.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Here.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Here.
Alderman Barber.
Here.
Alderman Nelson.
Here. Have a quorum, please rise during the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How's the view, Mark? How's the view? First item on the agenda is citizens' comment period. Any citizen wishing to speak on any
Recording
item,
in progress.
rise, come forward, give us your name and address, and tell us what you want to tell us. Yes, sir, please.
Questions related to the same, roughly the same topic, the development at Pleasant View, which is on 51st Street and borders my property, outside of my property. I guess I'd potentially like to address the one question during the part of the agenda where they'll be discussing those plans. It might make a little bit more sense during that time. My main concern is water. We had some heavy rains, but they were relatively brief, and we're still kind of under drought conditions, and yet my sump pump was running pretty steadily for a short time. So my concerns, I know I mentioned these at the last meeting as well. There was a swale at the south side of my property that borders the retention pond that's going to be there as well. So there's a swale that is fed by a drain pipe that I guess I just recently found out that that's actually a drain pipe coming from not even the new development, but the area of 49th and east of 49th. So I guess I just wanted to ask some questions about that. And like I said, it might be a little bit more relevant when we're discussing that agenda item. And the second question I had was, as a parent of a son that's going to be using his bicycle on the new road that's there, I just want to find out what the plan is for the sidewalk to be continued through to the school, to the Pleasant, I think it's Pleasant View School that's in that area as well. So those are kind of my main concerns or questions. Okay,
on both of those, I suggest you get a time with the city engineer and he can address all of those issues for you.
Okay.
And the developers here as well. So
okay.
Between them, they can get you all the answers.
You'd prefer that not to be part of the meeting, but separately?
It's kind of localized to you, so.
Okay, well.
If you wouldn't mind.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen wishing to speak? Anyone else? Okay, with that, I'm going to close the citizens' comment period. We move on to mayoral announcements. All right, Mark. The first one is a proclamation recognizing the service of former Alderman Dandria, and I just said it, Alderman. Live in Florida. I have to stand up here. Proclamation and recognition of Dandria, whereas Mark. Whereas Mark A. Dandria began elected Alderman on being whereas, in addition to his public services alderman, Mark A. Dandria was elected to the office of Common Council President on April 18th, 2017, and elected to the office of Common Council President again on April 16th, 2019, and continuing his public service as Common Council President, was again elected to the office of Common Council President on April 21st, 2020, which service, in addition to that of alderman, continued until it became time for the issuance of this proclamation. And whereas on July 14th, 2021, Mark A. Dandria submitted his letter of resignation to the office of city clerk, noting that while timing was not always perfect, in honoring his commitments to his business and daily life, he and his wife were relocating out of state due to his wife receiving a new, really nice job in Florida. In addition, stating that he had been truly honored to serve the residents of the First District and will miss being involved with the city of Franklin. Oh, he's son 12 months out of the year. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed that I, Stephen R. Olson, Mayor of the City of Franklin, on behalf of the citizens of the city, staff of the city government, and all of those public officials and staff who know you and worked with you, good luck and Godspeed, Mark. Presented this 17th day of August, 2021.
Well, thank you, man. Peggy wanted to take a picture. My wife wanted me to take a picture. And I couldn't take it. As many of you are aware, Mayor Olson was my neighbor. I guess he's all of our mayor, but I guess I was his alderman. He got me into this. And so, well, he asked me. I was crazy enough to say yes many, many years ago. And it's a lot of fun. And I encourage citizens in general, get involved with municipal. It's the easiest way that you have an impact that's going to directly affect you. At the larger level, it takes so long, but at this level, maybe not as long. But as you see some of these deals as they come and they're presented to the common council on how many months or years it might take to get to fruition. But I definitely want to thank the city of Franklin. Also, my fellow alderpersons for getting to know, letting me get to know you guys, as well as vice versa. It was a lot of fun. It was work, a lot of reading, but I definitely want to wish you all the very best as you move forward on all of your future endeavors. Thank you. Thank you.
And what's the address in Sarasota?
If you're going to Sarasota, you're on the wrong side. I'm in Parkland. Thank you. Thanks. So long.
Hey, cut your grass, would you? Those are always bittersweet moments, but we do wish Mark all the best in the future. And we will be seeing him once in a while because he still has his dogs in Kenosha. So there we go. And by the way, you're required to stay for the whole meeting. Okay, next item is item 2B. Item 2B, a presentation on the unique natural resources features for the Conservancy of Healing and Heritage. Irene Yank is here. Irene, come on up. She is a Franklin High School senior in environmental studies. She's been working with the Conservancy for over a year, right, Mike? That wasn't an invitation. Can I make the announcement? Mike told me this evening that he's very pleased to tell everyone that the Conservancy project now is 100% funded, for at least for the current phases. The only phase left is the trail around the lake, but the pier is funded. The gardens are all finished. And so this marks a huge milestone for the Conservancy, which is just a tremendous asset for our community. It turns out that the wildest dreams of Mike and his folks of making it a respite and an attraction have come to pass. There's people visiting the Conservancy from all over the country, which is a tremendous thing for us. So anyway, and the other commercial is fundraiser for the Conservancy, the next Milkmen game on the 28th. The proceeds go to fund the Conservancy. So anyone interested in buying a ticket should see Mike or Jan. Irene, thank you. Please introduce yourself, use the microphone, and get up close and give us your presentation, please.
So thank you all for having me. My name is Irene Yank, and as you said, I'm a recent Franklin High School graduate. I have plans to attend Lawrence University in the fall and major in environmental studies. And I've been working with Mike since January, and we've just conducted a lot of preliminary data and information about the Conservancy and the lake and the forest. So I'm just here to share some of that information with you today. So just... Got it. All right, so just a brief history and overview. Kotmire Lake and the surrounding forests were actually formed tens of thousands of years ago during the Ice Age when the glaciers retreated and left a large block of ice behind, which formed the lake. The lake is spring-fed, so the majority of its water supply comes from underground water sources, although a small amount of runoff does come off Loomis Road. And then the forest is classified as an old-growth deciduous forest. In terms of wildlife, we not only did tracking during the winter when there was snow on the ground, but we also put up 3 trail cameras. And as you can see, here are some pictures that we've collected. There's a large amount of wildlife, including deer, turkeys, coyotes, possum, and a lot of species of birds. We put up bird feeders. There's a birding deck, and we put up many bird feeders, as well as feeding blocks to attract wildlife as well. There's also an abundance of wildflowers at the Conservancy. Some species include Canadian hornwort, skunk cabbage, bladderwort, and devil's darning needles, and those are just some pictures of the wildflowers there. In terms of trees, there's approximately 500 trees in the Conservancy and 27 different species. The most prominent species are American basswood, sugar maple, black cherry, and northern red oak. And this winter, we actually tapped a handful of those sugar maples and were able to collect 15 gallons of sap. And then this winter, this upcoming winter, we plan to tap many more and then possibly even sell the maple syrup from that sap. For soil, the predominant soil type is the Ozaki silt loam, although around the marsh and the perimeter of the lake, there's an Ashcombe silty clay loam. We did perform tests on the soil just to test its health and make sure there was no harmful chemicals or substances. We did a pH test and we found a normal pH of around 7. We also tested for reactive metals like bicarbonates and carbonates, and we yielded a negative result for that test. And that's positive. That's a positive good result because reactive metals can decrease nutrient absorption in plants. And then we also tested for lead and did not find a significant amount of lead, which is good because if there is lead in the soil, that can leak into the water and lake. Moving on to the marsh and lake. So west of Kotmire Lake, there is a drainage pipe that comes off of Loomis Road and carries any water runoff. However, this water does travel through a small creek and marsh before entering the lake, so it is filtered and is healthy when it enters the lake. We performed a lot of water quality tests. We performed an electric conductivity test, and that measures the ability of water to conduct an electrical current. And that's based off the amount of salt in the water. So the higher the reading for this test, that means there's more salt and more pollution, so we want a lower reading. For pH, the ideal range really varies depending on the body of water and the temperature, but usually for reference, a reading close to 7 is healthy for drinking. We tested oxidation reduction potential, and that measures the ability of water to oxidize or reduce another substance. And again, if this reading is high, it's going to be indicative of more pollution and more salt in the water, so we want a lower reading. We also tested temperature, and that was just kind of to see how the temperature varied from season to season. Here's a sample of the data that we collected from 1 week in April. So what we did is we tested the water as soon as it came off of Loomis Road in that mouth of the drain pipe. We tested about 10 yards east of the drain. We tested in the marsh, and then we tested 10 yards east of the marsh. And then again, we took an average lake sample. So as you can see, once the water comes off of Loomis Road, it's not super healthy. It has a high EC and a high ORP, but once it enters the lake, it's pretty clean water, pretty healthy. So that marsh and the creek is doing a really good job of filtering the water. Focusing in on the lake, as I said before, Kotmire Lake is a spring-fed glacial lake, and it has an area of 14 acres, and it actually has a maximum depth of 40 feet, making it the deepest lake in Milwaukee County. The bottom of the lake is composed mainly of marl, which is a carbonate-rich mud or mudstone. And then in the middle of the lake, there's actually a shallow sandbar that separates the lake into two basins, and there's a large deposit of rocks and boulders on that sandbar. And pictured on the right is a sample of a rock we took, and we determined it to be granite. This is just a depth map of the lake. So the red zones are 0 to 6 feet, orange is 6 to 12, and then all the way to purple, which is 30 to 40 feet. The circled region is the deepest point in the lake, which is roughly 40 feet. Along the perimeter, the lake remains fairly consistent, and the depth is about 3 to 6 feet. That boxed in region is the shallow sandbar, and the depth there is about 2 to 8 feet. And then a lot of the fish are going to be found in the shallow areas of the lake and kind of at those drop-off points where the depth suddenly becomes a lot deeper. And we also found carp spawning beds, and that's where those two arrows are pointing to, towards the southern end of the lake. So the weeds, the lake contains a few different types, none of which are invasive. We have pickerel weed, hydrilla, and coontail. And lastly, the wildlife in Kotmire Lake, it's not only home to turtles and bullfrogs, but a variety of fish species, including sunfish, panfish, largemouth bass, bluegill, and perch. And recently we did find Asian carp in the lake. During their spawning season in May, they had those spawning beds in the southern end. And right now we're currently discussing methods of controlling this population, but right now it does not seem to be too big of a problem, and there are many other fish species that are thriving. That's all. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Tremendous. Well done.
Thank you.
Alderman Wilhelm, I know you have questions or comments. Anybody?
Thank you. Yeah.
Tremendous job.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. for
Irene,
letting
you
me
did
share.
great.
Thank you.
Well done, Mike. Tremendous. Thank you. And for those of you, that's Mike Murray. Mike is the man responsible for the Conservancy, former chairman of M&M Bank Corp, which owned Franklin State. There you go. Also in your packet on B2C is a letter of thanks from Susan Robbie for the city's donation of wood chips that chipped all of the paths. Without that, that would have cost them a lot of money, and it saved Kevin a lot of yard space. Where is he? Thank you, Kevin, for doing that, and Glenn. Okay, any questions on those three items? All right, we'll move on to regular business. Item C1, approval of the regular amended meeting minutes of Common Council meeting July 20th. Any new additions or corrections? Thanks, folks. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. C2 is approval of the regular meeting minutes of August 3rd. Any additions or corrections? Barber and Mayor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Organizational business, any request for separate action? I got to do everything. That's what I meant. That's where I'm at. Alderwoman Wilhelm.
I don't need to have a request for separate action. I just needed to make a point that there are several of us that have meetings on the date for the item 1. It's 1
That's
first
the next item.
on the agenda.
That's the next item.
Just so you know on that one.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we'll talk about that one. Okay, is there a motion to approve the 3 appointments? Jack Takarian to the Board of Water Commissioners, Matt Cool to Community Development Authority, Jeff Kadursky to Tourism. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Second. It's getting difficult, folks. Barbara and Hanneman. Madam Clerk.
Alderman Mayor.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Motion carries, 5 ayes, no noes, no absent, no abstentions. You're not absent, Mark, you're just not here. G1 is consent agenda. We'll take item A separately. Is there a request for separate action on B through F? Mr. City Attorney.
With regard to sub D, the Milliman proposed agreement, the city treasurer has been communicating with Milliman and had a number of correspondence, emails, et cetera. I had reviewed the draft contract that was in the packet before the last meeting. Went through all their changes and had no problem with any, except instead of the standard city form, if there's any claim and action thereon, that it proceed to Milwaukee County Circuit Court. And the legal staff of this national company had proposed arbitration instead thereof. And I just suggested that be deleted. And then following communications with them by the treasurer, they suggested, okay, instead, let's put a federal bench trial as the alternative process. And that went into through yesterday, I believe. And I conferred with the treasurer to see what his thoughts were, because I understood last week that would likely look for a different contributor. And then when we spoke yesterday, it was that this is a national company that is highly experienced, well qualified, and preferred by the treasurer. And out there in the real world, the services to be provided are providing a very slim, even to hypothetically guess what type of claim might arise out of it. So he contacted them and suggested, okay, all your changes are okay with the city legal services department, and to move forward on this relatively unique services agreement, staff will propose that the original arbitration provisions they suggested stay in. So I understand that the city treasurer has handed out the redraft of that, and that's the bottom line on it, so staff's recommending approval.
Any other requests for separate action on B through F? With the changes to these, is there a motion to approve B through F? Barbara and Mayor, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Go back to item 1A. Alderman Wilhelm. Mr. Eddy?
Already made my comments, just that there's several of us that have meetings, so if it runs over the time, some of us will have to leave, and that might present a forum problem.
Comment?
We don't intend to have this meeting go longer than an hour and a half. The consultants, am I on?
Yeah.
The consultants intend that this is not going to go longer than 90 minutes. In fact, 90 minutes is the extreme bound.
Okay, I guess when I responded to that, I didn't know it was going to be a council meeting because I do have another meeting and it would not leave me any time to, eat in between or anything, so.
Right, yeah, no, we intended to try and give you a little bit of room. And if people have to bail early, then consultants will be here to accommodate that.
We need to be careful how we notice that, because if the council members bail out, you still have a group there. You still need to be able to have those group talk, so we'll figure that out. Is that it? Madam Clerk.
I would just suggest, as I have on the agenda, there is no ending time. On your action sheet, you have that the meeting is from 3 to 4:30. It's suggested that you not put an end time, because if you end at 4 o'clock and somebody has seen the notice or the agenda and they think you're still there till 4:30, they could potentially show up. So we just would not put an end time. Shape that in the motion.
Okay. Is there a motion to schedule the special common council meeting to begin at 3 o'clock p.m. on August 26th? Is there such a motion? Second. Barber and Hanneman, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now G2 is a concept review. The folks from Bear Development called and asked if they could be moved back on the agenda a little bit. They're running somewhat late, so we will do that. So let's move on to G3. It happens to be on page 67, a resolution authorizing certain officials to accept the landscape buffer yard easement as part of a CSM for Franklin Business Park Additional Number 1 MLG. Is there a motion to approve? Okay, there we go. Wilhelm and Hanneman, item G3, motion to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. G4, page 79, is a resolution authorizing certain officials to accept a conservation easement on this same lot in the Franklin Business Park. Hanneman and Barber, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, yeah, let's do G5. Vanderwall Associates.
Recording
Parkland,
stopped. Recording in progress.
Parkland acquisition. Keith, who's doing this? Marion? Miss X?
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to introduce the item, and then the consultants from Vanderwald and Associates are present to conduct the input session itself. And my colleague in this project is Alderwoman Hanneman, who is the lead staff, as was assigned under the terms of the contract when it was expanded. So I just want to give the council a little bit of background. This study is a study to create a plan for the use of park impact fees based on the policy recommendations of the Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, or Corp, as it's referred to colloquially. Just to clarify what park impact fees are, they are fees assessed on new homes. So any new development, whether it is a single family home or two-family home or multifamily home in the city of Franklin, all residential development is assessed a fee of either $1,909 for homes or $1,240 for multifamily homes. In 2022 or 2021, that is the current fee. The purpose of the fee is to pay for the growth that is being created by those new developments. So just as a thought exercise, you had a concept review on your previous agenda and will later tonight for a total of approximately 385 single-family units. If all those units were to be developed this year, next year, that would be $34,000 of park impact fees. So the fees require a match. It varies depending on the type of park, but that is a significant amount of revenue. And just as a point of information, there is a large amount of impact fees that are currently being evaluated for expenditure in 2022. You also have future large amounts in 2025 and 26, which have to be considered. So the purpose of this study is to help you create prioritization about how you're going to expend those fees. So there are additional fees assessed for other public services to accommodate new growth, but they're not part of the study that's currently being presented and collecting input. So the report deliverables, just a reiteration of the scope, this is a decision-making tool. So it is not a new policy, it's you taking a decision on the policy that has already been set. So it includes a list of priorities. So the draft report has a set of priorities in it to select from: geographic focus areas, maps, and also a bibliography including information about all the public input that was put into this study thus far. So the study includes input. There were multiple sessions with the Parks Commission, and they did take a motion recommending the purchase of a large park in the southwest portion of the city. There was also input from Plan Commission, and now your input is, we're here to receive that input, and it will be incorporated into the final draft, which will be reviewed at a later date. Just some terms. I know that these are terms that are defined in the Corp, but they refer to both the scale of a park, how large it is, and also generally the service area. So tied to these definitions are the percentages of impact fees that can be used. So that information is in the draft study and enumerated there, but generally speaking, trails have a high impact fee amount that can be spent versus the match, and then there's other percentages, but they vary based on how much of that impact fee has been assessed and how much of the need has been met. So that percentage is a reflection of the needs of the Corp that still need to be built out. So how this all fits together, just generally, you're currently undertaking the 2022 budget process. This study is not specific to that. So there are plans that are being made for existing impact fees that need to be spent in the medium term and short term. There's a capital planning process, which the city administrator is also undertaking with council and staff. And then the Parkland acquisition study is meant to tie together with all of that, but not to, it is meant to be a decision-making tool for capital programs after 2022 for parks. So, and with that, the consultants Brian Munson and Jackie Mish from Vandewald & Associates are here. And I will stick around to answer any questions that they can't, but I'd like to invite them forward to lead the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Planner X. As usual, well done. So if you would humor me for a moment and help the council and I, what's going to be the request, the ask for after your presentation tonight? Just so we can focus our minds on what's going
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to clarify that the question is, what's the next step after this process?
on, or what the ask is, either one.
Well, my understanding is the next steps are to work adopt the strategy through city committees and this body for adoption.
Well, Brian, if you're going to talk, grab that microphone. Okay.
How's the volume here? Can everyone?
There, you got to get friendly. Okay, Ms. Mish, thank you.
I'm happy to get closer. All right. Well, good evening. My name is Jackie Mish. I'm a planner with Vandewald & Associates. I'm here with Principal Brian Munson. I'm happy to present the latest version of the City of Franklin Parkland Acquisition Study. So the purpose of this project, I think it's an important thing to establish up front, is for us to assist the city in developing a strategy for spending its accumulated park impact fees. So we've done this by looking at your adopted Corp and your existing park impact fee study and understanding what recommendations are included in that. And then using that framework that the city's established, look at different ways to spend the accumulated park impact fees, so different types of park projects and different timing of spending those funds. So as Marion had stated, we did work with the Parks Commission to discuss goals for parkland acquisition. A key recommendation of your Corp includes acquiring land for a new regional or multi-community park. The Corp recommends that that park be located in the southwest quadrant of the city. As many of you know, that's the city's main growth area where most new residents will be located, so that makes a lot of sense. And then the Corp also acknowledges potential to co-locate that park with the existing county-owned Franklin Savannah, sort of leverage that site and have a bigger park. So this is a map, a little hard to see, but it's from your existing Corp that just shows existing parks in the community, and it shows sort of a service buffer around each one of those parks. So as you can see, the most underserved area of the community is the southwest corner of the city. So in working with the Parks Commission, we worked with them to establish and refine some goals for parkland acquisition. They advised that the city pursue a larger community park, so something in the 20 acres and above scale, or a medium scale neighborhood park. They advised that that park include both active and passive recreation opportunities. They also shared that it would be important to, where practical, connect as many parks in the community with recreation trails, so have a connected system of parks and recreation. And they also noted that there are some desired facilities that have been discussed over the years, such as ice skating, dog amenities, and pickleball. So more specifically, when looking at what land to acquire for new parkland, they suggested looking at 20 acres or more, once again in the southwest quadrant of the city. They agreed that there would be potential to locate that adjacent to the Franklin Savannah. And city could also consider co-locating with the waste management parcels, so the conservation easement associated with those lands. So a lot of opportunities to kind of take advantage of existing recreation and open space. They also advised considering connections with Ryan Creek, which does run through the Franklin Savannah property. And then again, when looking at parkland acquisition, considering opportunities to extend the city's trail network. So the report that we prepared does include a park impact fee strategy. This is a graphic that sort of summarizes that strategy. Our report has more details laid out, but basically the idea here is that the city has a strategy to be very proactive about how they use and spend park impact fees. The idea being that you always have a sense of where the next impact fee dollar will be spent. And that this is a process that you continually would update as you accumulate more park impact fees and as you spend park impact fees. So as Marion had noticed or noted, you have a potential to collect even more fees in 2021 and 2022. And so as those funds come online, continuing to update this process and updating your spending strategy. So I wanted to share a little background on park impact fees and matching funds. Marion did an excellent job of introducing impact fees, so I don't think I need to go into that in great depth, but every municipality is enabled by state statutes to collect impact fees. There are some limits in that you have to spend them on park projects that serve your new population. So you can't use it to make up a deficit in parkland that maybe you already have, but new park impact fees need to be serving new population that comes from development and growth. You can use them on acquiring land for parks, planning and land for parks, and then also new improvements to parks that are serving new population. I just wanted to add that it unfortunately, cannot be used for maintenance. So the city has a matching requirement in the system that is currently in place. The city's impact fee study, as Marion had mentioned, provides a percentage of any given park project that would be eligible for use of park impact fees, and I'll explain this shortly. But basically, most park impact fees are not most park projects are not 100% eligible for use of park impact fees. Therefore, there is some sort of match required by the city, whether that comes from the general fund or another city source. So this is sort of the key table that lays that out. The city's park impact fee breaks park projects down into two types. One type is park projects that are included in your adopted corp, and the other category is projects that are, quote, new projects that are not included in the city's adopted corp. So as you can see, for example, let's start with the table on the left side here. Different types of parks have different percentages that are eligible for park impact fee use. So you can see in the table that community parks and special parks, for example, are only 36% eligible for park impact fees. So the remaining 64% would need to the city would need to come up with the remaining 64% for those types of projects. You can see trails have a very high percentage that are eligible, 62%. And then on the right side of the slide, certain parks are not eligible for park impact fees at all, but neighborhood parks are 80% eligible and mini parks are 100% eligible. So this is a key determinant in the city's park spending strategy, because these percentages really drive how much match the city needs to come up with for any given park project.
Oh, before we leave that, could you go back to that slide, because I just had a question?
Yes.
Under the green section, which says community parks, you have NA, that it's not eligible, and it's not in the corp. Are there no community parks in our current Branson master plan? Because we have community parks.
No new community, there are community parks in your master plan, but the idea is that if you were to invest in a park that was not envisioned in the master plan, so like a brand new project that hadn't been conceived of before.
Okay, so the
Makes sense?
the community park that's listed in there as in the one by the Savannah.
Yes, that's a
that-
great point.
That's
So-
not considered a new project, but if we wanted to put in, say, a big dog park or whatever.
Yes, so the Southwest Park in the Corp would fall under the blue side of
Okay.
the.
And then regarding the previously planned parks, I noticed that you used the words dog amenities, and I wondered if you had gotten a copy of the previous impact fee study update, which the council had talked about dog park, and there was a list, and the list was included for park versus amenities, because amenities are completely different than a dedicated dog park. So can you address how you might look at the park for dogs versus amenities? Because it's been requested quite a while from the community.
Yeah, I think I'm on here. How about we'll do this a little easier. The list previously was input gathered from the Parks Commission, which identified a whole range of different facilities. This plan is more focused on how to go about the budgeting process and a strategy to identify what types of larger scale projects would be appropriate, and isn't really focused in on the actual physical improvements within each of those outside of some estimates of total cost to construct. So it's not making a recommendation for one type of park over another, but rather reflecting what's in the Corp today. One of the things that the Plan Commission had conversations about was the need to update the Corp, which is coming up, and how that will play into future discussions as well. But again, this is a reflection of what the adopted Corp currently says.
Okay, on that, no, the adoptive corp, one thing, but the update to the corp that was adopted by the council should have updated the corp. And because it's not inserted in there in the actual physical binder, doesn't make it any less important that the council didn't adopt it, I guess was my point.
And I guess in terms of the definition of the differential between a dog park and a dog amenities, again, this plan is not focused on the differential between those or other types of facilities, but rather that was a reflection of the input that we received.
Okay, well, I guess since we're taking sort of input on that, I would like to see us address some sort of, the dog park issue versus the amenities only, because if we're looking at new projects or park acquisition or putting it into something, we cannot spend money on it unless it's included in the study.
I want to clarify, you are correct that a dog park was included in the Rupert-Milky impact fee study. That is a different policy document than the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. So the Corp serves a purpose of communicating the overall planning for parks in the community, and that the Rupert-Milky study is in some ways also addressing how fees will be spent down, but it is not the same as the Corp. So one is a planning document and one is a reiteration of how far you have gotten on implementing the Corp. So it is a subsidiary document. So I see what you're saying, but Brian's point is essentially that this study, the intent is to determine largely the scale of the project. So could a dog park be contemplated in future? What size would it be and where would you locate it? That discussion can be part of this decision tool and is reflected in the Rupert-Milky study, but this document is founded in the Corp just as the Rupert-Milky study is.
So how do you go about implementing a dog park in your community if it's not in the Corp?
We would have to amend the Corp to specify that. I might not necessarily recommend doing that because, again, the definitions of parks are based on the service area and size and not necessarily the amenities in the park. Does that?
Well, it doesn't, except for someone who's sitting here and had many, many constituents come and ask us, we continue to think we're moving forward to make that happen, and it just never happens. So, and now once again, here's an opportunity. We're working with the Corp. We're going to how to spend fees. And again, we're saying this is not the correct opportunity. So it just seems like we just can't get beyond the amenity versus a dog park.
Sure. And I don't want to go in circles on this. I think it could be a recommendation within the study that some of those amenities be dedicated to dogs, but it's the scale, size, and type in the sense of the differentiation between the scale and whether it's a trail or not. So you could prefer that a large park have dog park as part of it and say some portion of the park be dedicated to dogs, that kind of thing. But again, it's a scale and location. So,
well, since you're looking for input, and the input I've gotten from many constituents for many years is that they would like to see a dedicated dog park area, not just a place where they get water and can walk their dogs.
For sure.
There's a lot of people that don't like the fact that we're putting dogs into their park because they're conflicting with pedestrians. So it seems like it would be really important for a community the size of nearly 36 square miles that we could find some small area dedicated, so we can avoid the conflict of the people that don't want to be running on the trail with dogs and having them confronted.
Sure. And what I'm hearing, what I've heard throughout this discussion has also been that there is a desire to have a large park that has a lot of amenities in it. So that would certainly be an appropriate amenity in a large community park.
Let's all be careful that we don't get down into very specifics, because that's not the purpose of the study. But I hear what you're saying. Okay.
All right.
Jackie?
So let's see what we have next. So just briefly, just wanted to share, I think this body knows this, but impact fees do need to be spent back down within a period of time. Currently, the city of Franklin has established an 8-year spending period. Otherwise, they do need to be returned to the folks to which those fees were charged, which is a very challenging situation that I think everybody agrees should be avoided. So this is a table that is included in the strategy report. This basically summarizes funds, accumulated park impact fees, and when they expire by year. So you can see that we are showing a total of $2.3 million that would need to be spent by the end of 2028. You have a little bit of time for that total amount. In the very near term, 2022 and 2023, we're operating in that the immediately expiring funds in 2022 have been somewhat spoken for. There are no funds that expire in 2023. And then you can see in subsequent years, for example, 2024, about $200,000 are expiring. And then if you keep going, 2026, 2027, some fairly large dollar amounts are expiring in those years. So the importance of planning now is paramount. And then, as we mentioned, city is continuing to collect fees going forward. So from here, I would like to go over the preliminary timelines for spending the funds. As you'll see in the report, there are a number of different scenarios that we've provided. So we're looking forward to discussing those with you. Before we dive into that, I wanted to share some key takeaways from what I've shared so far. As I said before, there's a need to spend over $2.3 million in impact fees by the end of 2028. That amount is sufficient to purchase a large parcel of land in the southwest area or anywhere that would meet the goals for Parkland acquisition. As I mentioned previously, the match requirement does make it a little bit difficult to use the accrued funds quickly, since you do have to come up and budget for or find other sources for that match amount. And the percentage for each type of park that is eligible for park fees matters a great deal in what the city strategy may be. So we did present this to the Plan Commission back in July. I just want to share some thoughts from that, or some input from that meeting. Plan Commission agreed there is a desire to update the Corp to reflect current needs. People identified ways where they felt it was out of date. The Plan Commission confirmed the need for parkland on the southwest side of the city, expressed possibility of co-locating with existing open space areas. They did comment that once the right parcel or parcels are identified, it will be important to move quickly to acquire that parcel. And then while the Plan Commission did not really pick a scenario or really provide a prioritization of any of the scenarios, we did discuss scenario I as one option that had some merit. And then finally, there was a suggestion that looking to the center of the city for a park could be desirable as well. So we have broken our many scenarios down. I will not go through each one of them with you because there are quite a few, but I can summarize them into two major categories. A through F are scenarios that implement your Corp. And so that involves pursuing a community park of varying sizes. So you can see on the slide the different 30 acres, 80 acres, different size community parks. And each one of those is something that the city could consider. Generally speaking, these tend to have higher match requirements because a lower percentage of parks that are in your Corp, a lower percentage of those projects are eligible for park impact fees. And then our second group of scenarios is if you were to diverge from the Corp, so pursue projects that are not conceived of in your current Corp. That just tends to include neighborhood parks with different combinations, including trails and improving neighborhood parks, since those tend to have higher percent eligible for park impact fees. These projects tend to have a lower match requirement. So we can talk about each one of these as people wish to, but I thought I would start by introducing them and then hearing from all of you about what you think about the proposed scenarios. Before we do that, just wanted to share next steps include collecting input from this body, finalizing the strategy document, and then it would move through the approval process to adopt the strategy.
One other thing I would add in terms of the strategies, really it's an analysis of what's in the plan and what does it mean. It's not presented in an order that says any of the various scenarios are prioritized over the others, but rather as an opportunity to analyze the impacts from a budgeting standpoint, because there's a very, very large range of impacts. We really see a strategy like this is intended to help inform future budget decisions, because this is something that certainly doesn't happen in one budget cycle potentially. It's something that could be planned for over time, over multiple budgets, so that you have really the opportunity to look out in the future of what is the Corp calling for and how would you implement them from a monetary sense while utilizing the fees prior to expiration. Again, a lot of different ways those can be implemented and would have very different budget impacts. But we wanted to present all the different scenarios, regardless of whether we thought they were relatively feasible to ones that were not. But we wanted to present all of them so that you had the best information available, so that you can both analyze what does the current Corp call for, but then as you open up discussions in the future about changes to that Corp, you can look at the ramifications of what those amendments could be.
I'll just kick this off by saying the Plan Commission, Marion, correct me. The Plan Commission actually surprised me a bit in their rather strong feelings that the Corp was outdated and we ought not be worried about it. Is that fair? Including me. So, and I happen to do that loudly, but, and that's been my problem all along. I mean, here's a Corp that was written in 2005 and we're relying on it to make spend decisions for 2028. Doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, that's my personal opinion. Alderwoman Hanneman.
And I want to thank Marion and the Vanderwall team for being here and the amount of work that's gone into this, because it has been quite a process. I'll maybe reserve some of my comments and suggestions because they've already been put into this plan as I've been working on it with the team and with the Parks Commission. But to your point, Mayor, the Corp is aged and maybe written at a point in time where Franklin was not developed to the degree that it is now in the way that it has become developed, and within the constraints of the market being what it is in development. So that point is particularly well taken. There was an update in 2015 that was intended to sort of take the Corp out through 2030. Am I correct, Marion? Yes. 2030 is the date on it. Okay. But within the last 6-7 years. So there have been updates. So I do think that this particular plan does represent some more recent thinking. Does it deserve another update? Maybe, maybe not. That's something that we can argue or discuss at another point in time. But I do think the point that should be made is, and is it up there right now? No. On one of the slides, and this was something that I think Plan Commission brought up as well as Parks Commission brought up, is we are sitting at a point in time on the cusp of a great deal of development, residential and industrial. And if we don't take the opportunity to secure the land that we ultimately want and need sooner than later, it's not going to be available when we do want it. The other things that we want to consider is if we should ever have to consider borrowing to acquire the land, the interest rates now are very low. They might not always be low. So this is something that we've discussed at the Finance Committee as well. So I think that this is very timely, and whether or not everything fits with the Corp or if we should look outside the Corp, I think we can do that. But the point is that we really need to think very clearly about what parcels of land and what types of parks that we want for the long haul. And that's what this is trying to get at. So I would appreciate the any input that any of you can give so we can take that back to the Parks Commission.
If you could just briefly help me out with your process. Where do trails fit in and what do you do? How does a trail come to you and then what do you do? How would you walk through that? Just real briefly, just to understand your process.
So the Corp did anticipate that trails would be a component of the growth of the park system. And that's why it has some allocations. It doesn't have a specific location tied to it, But for example, the Parks Commission talked about the Ryan Creek corridor, such that in the event parcels adjacent to the creek begin to develop, that there could be opportunities to acquire easements or right-of-ways adjacent to the creek that could become a trail corridor. And then, for example, using this chart that's up right now, the 2022 funds have been identified potentially for installation of a trail extension. So the park fees, as we said, can be used in a lot of different ways. It can be to acquire land. It can be to improve facilities. So trails can fall into both. You can acquire the trail corridor and then improve the trail system that would go into it and pay for the pavement and all the planning that has to happen to make that happen. But that's one example of how trails work. And the same can be said as well on the parks. That's why there's scenarios which are land banking, buying a park early and letting it kind of the neighborhood grow up around it and then improving it once the neighborhood's there is another scenario. So that's kind of how they all kind of snapshot together.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to go back to the amenities. So in the Parkland acquisition strategy, that is the draft that you're asked us to comment on page 1, it talks about the mini parks. And then it says it's more cost effective to maintain a larger park than several mini parks. And so if we're looking for input, I also agree with that. I would like to see us spend more on the larger parks. On page 2, you mentioned the 2 sites, the Savannah and the waste management site. I'm wondering if they are too close together or if they would be combined as one park. And then the last point I have is item D says the strategies and the goals for the Parkland acquisition are to add desired facilities to the park system. And this is where I got the including dog amenities. And then it says pickleball courts. Now I'm kind of was just told on the last one that we can't talk about a dog park, only amenities because they're not in the plan. In 2014, we weren't even discussing pickleball courts. So it's almost like, okay, we can't hear you on a dog park, what the residents have, and the council has tried to move forward with several times, but we can hear you on the pickleball courts. So somehow the pickleball courts are included as a desired facilities, but the residents for the dog park somehow cannot be included. So that puzzles me a little bit. So if you could address my questions.
Well, sure. I can talk first to the Savannah waste management co-locations. In the southwest, actually, if you could pull up the map towards the front there, this might be helpful. In the southwest corner, of course, we've got the county's Savannah Park, which is an undeveloped park at this stage. And then we have the future waste management lands, which fall to the south and slightly to the west. They're not directly contiguous, but there are parcels in between. So there are opportunities. What we talked about with the Parks Commission and a little bit with the Plan Commission was the idea of co-locating potentially a neighborhood scale park in the middle, which becomes the bridge between both, so that you have larger region serving conservation parks with a neighborhood serving park scale and amenities that would serve the residential development around it. Now, what this map doesn't have on it, of course, is the land use plan, which is also in the packet, where we overlaid the existing parks, the service areas, the plant, all this map basically over the land use, which shows the residential growth coming in this direction. And so the variety of different parks that could happen in here could help bridge that. But again, yes, Savannah and the waste management parcels are roughly 40 acres apart in some places and do represent an opportunity to connect those two facilities and deliver a larger context park. The question becomes how and which parcels. As far as, again, the amenities, perhaps a bit in the semantics, but we see, when we talk about a dog amenities within a context of a park, in a community park, there can be, in essence, an area dedicated to dog use fenced in with amenities to serve those facilities as part of a larger scale park or as part of a neighborhood scale park. We see those as more improvements. The pickleball was something that came through the Parks Commission as well as an improvement potential that could fall into existing parks or future parks. Again, the goal of this is to look at scale and overall expenditures. The details of how those expenditures happen vary between scenarios and would certainly vary based on the facility that's being built. The cost ramifications of an ice skating rink versus a conservation park are very different, for example. So this plan is trying to look at the scale of the facility and the approximate budgeting mechanism that would get it there, whether it's in the Corp or not in the Corp. But the final outfit of those parks would be a decision that would be made down the line with input from the Parks Commission and the Plan Commission and the Council.
So what would be the scale and steps to have a dog park? What's the scale? What's the land acquisition? What's the need for that?
It depends a little bit about the type of facility you want to make. We've seen urban dog parks as small as an acre. We've seen them as large as 120 acres with a variety of different different facilities in support of them. Typically, dog parks, we think of a fenced enclosure, so a contained space. The challenge of determining what scale is really a function of what service area you want to try to serve. They can be a small neighborhood, they can be a full community. And so different facilities will have different needs and certainly different impacts, so the geography will matter as well. So co-locating them next to uses that would not be problematic would be one thing to look at. But again, they'll vary in price and outfit based upon what you're trying to serve.
And if you wanted to dedicate a certain park to that, that would require a park acquisition of land.
Potentially, it could be a component of a larger park. A small piece of a community park could be, used for a dog park, dog amenities. It could be the entire parcel. Again, it really depends on decisions made by the Parks Commission and Plan Commission.
And not the council.
And the council, sorry. Not to complete the loop, yes, and the council.
Okay. Well, I still think we should focus a little bit on that and consider that need of the community, because this is our opportunity to try to spend some money to buy some land. The price of land's only going up. If we don't start addressing it now, we're going to have, an unmet need in the community size. And that probably something that would be a missed opportunity.
Anyone else? Commissioner Alderwoman Hanneman.
Thank you. And if I can address just a little bit, Alderwoman Wilhelm, the Parks Commission and the Working Committee on this particular project, we did discuss this at length and ultimately went with the verbiage of dog amenities rather than dog park in this particular situation, because if we used the word dog park, that would necessarily exclude putting waste stations and watering stations along trails, where amenities can also include a full park. So that's why we went with that verbiage.
I'm just going to say it. It just continues to amaze me that we use a document in 2005. And sure, it got updated in 2015. I'm going to argue with you. 2015 was just to put in Kayla's Playground. That's it. Not to make it 2040. But we continue to use a document in 2005 to justify what we want to do today. It's garbage. So, and having this conversation that the Corp says that you can't do something because it's not in it. If we want it, we'll do it. Plain and simple. So what's next?
That's it from us. I feel that if anyone has other thoughts on specific scenarios they like or dislike, we would be happy to hear that. But that was the end of our presentation.
Oh, by the way, the one other thing that the Corp doesn't do, and this study, and I don't know how you guys would do it, but it doesn't account for any big picture out of the box thinking, because that's just not what you do, nor does it count for working with developers for Parkland. So, we got big holes there to fill, that may be filled, and it's just a gap. But you're going to argue with me, aren't you? Miss X.
The subdivision regulations, it's certainly appropriate to address how land gets dedicated during that process. So I definitely hear you on that. What's next is that the consultants are going to take the input that's been received this evening and incorporate it into a final draft of the document, which will be circulated back up through Parks Commission, Plan Commission, and the Common Council. We'll also be circulating a survey. So there's a number of scenarios ranked in here, or they're not provided ranked. You'll be given the opportunity to review the final draft and then rank those scenarios. We'll be distributing a survey to the legislative bodies. And then Common Council will do as you will. So you'll be presented with the input of all of those bodies and how they view the different scenarios and the different options that you have with the funds that you have. During that time, there will probably be a little bit of work done to continue to reconcile the ongoing budgeting processes and capital planning processes, because as you probably know, there's work being done around how to expend some of the existing funds, just to make sure that there's clarity around how it all fits together. But if you have any questions in the meantime, please direct them to me as staff, and I can also work with the consultants to make sure that any additional feedback you have is incorporated, and then they will be returning a final draft for a September timeline. I have to figure out versus Parks Commission and Plan Commission, there's a little bit of a glitch in getting it through that timeline in September. So, but it will come back to you to make a decision later this fall. So, any other questions?
Yes,
Thank you very much.
I have.
Alderman Barber.
About a specific trail, would I just talk to you about that then just to find out where that might be?
Yes, please. You can address any of those questions to me or on the city engineer as well. So,
Okay.
yep.
I have a question.
Okay, Alderman Wilhelm.
This is related to the chart on page 114 where it talks about the Pleasant View Neighborhood Park Development, and it gives the 2020 funds. Previously, the council had gave the direction to go out for bid, and will that need to be updated, or where are we at with that? Are we going to allocate the money to finish that park?
Sorry, which are you referring to? Pleasant View Park?
It doesn't matter. It's not on the agenda.
It's in the document on page 114.
The
with
Director of Administration will answer that question for you later. Not part of the agenda. So we're going to move on.
Did I hear from the city attorney? Got his hand up.
The chair said it's not germane. We'll get an answer for you. That's it. Why is everybody looking at me like this? That's it. We're moving on.
City attorney has his hand up still. Maybe it's not related to my question. Maybe it's related to something else. I don't.
We're going to move on to item G6, which is standards and findings of decisions of the City of Franklin Common Council for Viridian Homes for natural resources special exception.
Move to adopt the resolution for the natural resources special exception for Viridian Homes.
Thank you very much. It'll be Wilhelm and Barber. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. G7 is on page, no page number. Is a resolution conditionally approving a final plat for Pleasant View Reserve. Alderman Wilhelm.
I'm basically okay with the final plat. I have reviewed the documents very closely. I have some concerns and some questions before we adopt this. It's my understanding that there are no guarantees to cover the next item, which is the subdivision development agreement. And I'm reluctant to make the motion to approve a final plat that it only improves guarantees for phase 1 of the development. So the resolution that's in front of us talks about, and this is the very first page of the resolution. It talks about this is to be completed as part of Phase 1 and Phase 2, so we're actually approving a final plat. Final plats are pretty much final plats. I don't know how you come back and change or get the subdivision development agreement to address the items that aren't covered. So the number one concern as far back as the incorporation of the Safe Routes to School plan into our comprehensive master plan was safe school access. And previously, our direction was to complete the school access as part of Phase 1. We are not doing that in this case. We are doing Phase 1 as the northern portion. And while we enforced these requirements on the previous developers, there was no carryover when we, the city, took over the construction and oversight of the project, and this is when Lynch was going to oversee it. And then they completely understood about the Phase 1 and Phase 2 and the desire to have Marquette as a first completion all the way to the school with the pedestrian access. And so I'm dismayed at the goals that kind of dropped out of the process, that we will not see access to the school this year. A sidewalk to the school is not included in this. And there will not be a completion of the section of Marquette Avenue from 49th to the school, which is also not in Phase 1 for this year. And there is also the connection for the park for the residents is not part of this. However, I thought, well, that's fine. We'll catch that in the subdivision and development agreement. And then when I got to G8 to read the subdivision development agreement, I realized we're only doing guarantees for Phase 1. So that leaves those other items sort of unfinished. And we all know and hope that, the project will completely move forward. But should the market decline, as we've seen with Icon development, and we don't incorporate anything of Phase 2 into those documents, I have concerns that the guarantees that I had really hoped in this council had really pushed to have done up front could drop out. So I'm kind of a little bit hesitant until we can address how Phase 2 will be approved. And the only change, if we can address those of the Phase 2 and the securities, I have no problem with making the motion, but I do have one change to the resolution. There was a new resolution put in front of us. I don't know how that differs from what's in the packet.
If I may, there was a condition added that the model home for Pleasant View Reserve subdivision shall be located within the platted area of that subdivision and otherwise comply with the standards of the UDO for model homes.
What's the impact of tabling this for 2 weeks? Is there a deadline on this?
Today is the deadline.
Mr. City Engineer?
So if I could, at least what I recall is history. So before we had two developers, the developer on the south side, Mr. Prisbilla, was going to, his Phase 1 was going to basically improve the road and sidewalk from 49th to the school. That was his Phase 1. And the developer on the north side, can't remember the name. Oak Ridge. That was, so as part of that whole thing, we would have a sidewalk from one to the other. When one developer happened, Phase 1 was only for north of Marquette. So all the improvements for 49th to the school would be in Phase 2. The subdivision development agreement that you see tonight is only for Phase 1. That only covers the activities for Phase 1. So it is true that it doesn't seem like it's appropriate to go ahead and install sidewalk, curb, and gutter when they're not doing the rest of the developments right there. So we'd like to see the development happen at the same time that the road's improved.
Well, it doesn't really address the sureties and guarantees. So if you're only going to give sureties for 200 and whatever $1,000, and it's only going to be the items listed in phase one, how do you pass a final plat with a phase two that requires a trail, a sidewalk to the school, and the completion of 49th to the school? I think that needs to be addressed. I've never seen a final plat be approved and not have all the sureties of the complete final plat. And I really feel like I shouldn't be getting into all the details of the subdivision development agreement because it's in another section, but it makes me hesitant to move forward on making the motion unless we can put some kind of contingencies that we're going to address the subdivision development agreement with both phases. And reading through that development agreement, there are all kinds of languages in there that sort of address things that need to be flushed out. One of them would be the development, and you gave me that map earlier. I don't know if I have it right here, but it showed the section of Marquette that I'm concerned with about getting completed from 49th to the school. And it shows where the right-of-way is. And we've talked about staying out of that tree line for years. And I ask that we get 6 foot on the south side to address leaving the buffer for the residents. And your map appears to show that, but then the development agreement says that all roads must be put on the center line. And if you look at where the center line is, that development agreement will drive that road back into the right-of-way through the tree line again. So
I would suggest to you that that language is standard. We put it in every, so for the new roads that he's installing, would be the case. Marquette is such a unique situation. We'd have to write something special. We did not do that. I guess I'm looking at the developer. Would you be willing to increase the amount of surety in this portion to include the part of Marquette Avenue? So that could be a change. And then you could pass it tonight. We could make that amendment.
okay, so when we get to this subdivision development agreement, what you're saying is the sureties of the plat for both 1 and 2, we can fully discuss in the development agreement, because it's not just that section Marquette, it's the sidewalk and it's the trail as well.
Would you be willing to also include the trail? So that apparently we have a willing.
Okay.
Okay,
Let's,
so then I have a motion that I can.
On the plat, or you want to go to 8? You want to go to the development agreement, or you want to stay on the plat?
I'm okay, we all discussed that we can address that, but.
On G7,
City attorney has.
Mr. City Attorney.
Condition number 3 in the resolution basically speaks in terms of a development agreement for the entirety of the plat. And it's not saying phase 1 separate from phase 2. It's the entire plat, and I thought it was for the entire plat, and I didn't look at engineering details in the subdivision development agreement. So,
He said for phase 1.
It's for the whole plot.
are we able to provide a subdivision development agreement for phase 2 at this point in time if staff produces that?
We are not.
Part
We're
of the
still
standard.
working through the process of approving the plans. So
Okay, so it's not ready for development agreement at this point in time.
not for the entire plat, no, sir. Phase 1 only.
Well, then, at a minimum, condition number 3 should be amended to specify that the subdivision development agreement for the phase 1 be executed, approved, and that occurs prior to recording of the final plat, but there should be a provision in there that this final plat approval is conditionally approved on when all plan information is available and reviewed, that it is conditioned upon same terms subdivision development agreement for all public improvements to be provided as part of phase 2 of the final plat.
That's how we've been doing these.
Well, I'm not putting a timing I don't recall any issue being raised by anybody, and I probably did the same thing. It's all standard form, and you would assume that subdivision development agreement is for the entirety of the plat unless it specifies otherwise. This one doesn't say phase 1. So I suggest adding that condition because that'll happen. Okay. And as a condition of approval at whenever the time is appropriate based upon review and preparedness, that a subdivision development agreement for phase 2 shall be completed, executed, etc.
And just to acknowledge to the Alderwoman's concern, there is no guarantee that phase 2 would happen. I mean, if the economy goes to tanks, it could happen.
Well, if we're holding a bond for 300,000, we still got the bond for 300,000.
The bond's only for the phase 1 improvement.
Which is why she suggested that we have a language in there that have that. My suggestion would be that 300,000 would include trail and the sidewalk and curb and gutter. Right? So when we get to that, when we get to 8, we'll just add that section in there. So on the final plat, we're going to take care of the curb, the trail and the sidewalk, curb and gutter in the development agreement.
We're going to take care of all those. So it can say completed as part of 1 and 2, because that's what we're approving for this resolution. It includes both 1 and 2.
If I understood the city attorney correctly, the final plat as it's written includes the whole development.
Right, and that's the understanding of city plats. I guess before I make my motion, I would like to hear from
Alderman Dandridge, oh, jeez. You're sitting in the chair.
I'm in the chair, yeah, in the hot seat.
Alderman Mayor.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. The deadline is today. Who sets that deadline, and what if we miss it?
It's the state. So you are required to approve, deny, or conditionally approve the final plat by today. Otherwise, the applicants may record it without your input.
Okay. So they could just do it then without our input. Okay. All right. Because to me, the connections to the school and to the park were one of the most important things. And when we talk about phases, the previous developer did want to do it in phases, and I was actually for that, but this council said no to that developer, no phases on a 5-to-1 vote. And I don't think it's quite right for us to allow phases now. But to me, the most important is the connections and getting the connection, safe connection to the school. So if that can be done and worded that way, and if everybody's comfortable with that wording, I guess I'm okay.
Okay, again, the city attorney, if I'm saying it correctly, has opined that the final plat includes both phases. With that, Alderman Wilhelm.
I guess when we get to that, my concern is I did not read that document in its entirety thinking that we would turn phase 1 into phase 2. So some of the language in there might not quite click with the section of phase 2. So that'll leave that up to city
With all due
attorney
respect,
to do.
we have a city attorney for that. And he says it's okay. So,
All right, well, I guess would like to make a motion to adopt a resolution to approve the final plat for the Pleasant View Reserve subdivision with the correction in the first whereas, where it states that the extension of Marquette Avenue will be by the city. So I'm asking to put the extension of Marquette Avenue, insert the words by the city, because right now it reads that that is part of the development and that they're doing it. And that's extremely important because in point number 2, it says that they will be responsible for special assessments for everything that's in here, and if we don't clarify that portion, then they'll be on the hook. So.
Is there a second? What about what?
The addition to condition number 3 provide for subdivision development agreement for phase. Designate one that has to be approved before.
Okay, on top of that, the city
recording
attorney
phase
has amended.
one.
Do you want to give
Yes.
us specific language, or do you want to take it off the tape? Either one, whatever you want.
And to amend condition number 3 to clarify that the subdivision development agreement required thereunder, as currently written in the resolution before the common council, be specified as applicable to phase 1, and to add a provision to condition number 3, accordingly, but not required for approval and execution prior to recording of the final plat for phase 2.
Your motion.
Yes, I'm not very happy about it, but yes, it's part of my motion.
Yes, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. G8, we're going to include some language that says that the development agreement includes the provision of trail, curb, and gutter for Market Avenue. So my suggestion is we make that motion and just say that subject to additional language.
Are you moving on to 8 already?
Yep.
So this is the subdivision of development agreement
Yep.
for phase 1, and you want me to, I guess I'd like the city attorney to word that properly
To include
for the motion.
curb, gutter.
Because I want to make sure that the road gets done. And then the question I have is, when we go to do phase 2 with the Marquette from 49th to the school, are we going to have a separate subdivision development agreement? And I'm hearing the answer is yes. And then when we do have that separate subdivision development agreement, I would like to make sure that the center line of the road is addressed, that I brought up. So it's not just flat, it has to follow that within the right-of-way, because we all know there's more right-of-way on the north than there was provided on the south.
Nods there and nods there. Notes there and notes there, so.
But the wording has to match the plans. And there's
Okay.
quite a few things that don't really do that.
Okay.
so.
So, let's, do you want us to go somewhere else first? You come back? The city attorney.
With regard to the financial security addition, I suggest that city engineer provide what should be added to the motion.
Mr. City Engineer. This was curb, gutter, pedestrian trail, and sidewalk.
Improvements to Marquette Avenue on the south side, including curb, gutter, sidewalk, and also a trail connection to Pleasant View Park.
Let's back up and do this like a motion. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing mayor and city clerk to sign the subdivision development agreement upon a review and acceptance by the city attorney to include additional language by the city engineer that will include provision of curb, gutter, sidewalk, and pedestrian trail in this phase from phase 2.
And that phase 2 development agreement will be forthcoming. So moved.
Barbara Beach. Oh, Nelson, John, I didn't recognize your voice. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. G9 is a resolution to authorize acceptance of a stormwater management facilities agreement for Pleasant View Reserve.
And for,
Is there a motion to approve?
Mayor?
This can't be that hard. Alderman Willem.
Same situation, the stormwater addition of, includes the north and south of Marquette Avenue
so,
and
Mr. City Engineer.
so clarification, this is for the entire parcel that was included in item G7. We will amend this stormwater plan once phase 2 is completed.
is that acceptable legally by the city attorney's opinion?
I don't-
That we're
The
going to
city
amend it?
engineer just said it was the way we're going to do it. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Could I please have an answer to the question? It's very important that we get this correctly done. We don't want to have.
Alderwoman, this is exactly why we're doing a code of conduct and the rules and procedures. City engineer is responsible for this. He says yes, it's yes. You don't have to ask the city engineer, then the city attorney, then the clerk, then the finance officer. City engineer says yes.
I wouldn't have to be doing any of this if phase 2 was in it either. So I'm just trying to make sure the documents are complete and we all know what we're getting. The residents of Franklin deserve that, and I can't explain that unless I know we're clear.
Mr. City Engineer.
To answer the question, I don't believe that any additional motion is needed. We have it covered.
Okay. Move to approve.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. G10, page, what is this? No page number. I'll learn that after the
301.
next one or the one after it. It's a request for, well, let's not do this one. Let's go back to G2, which is a concept review for 115 lot subdivision by Bear Development. Mr. Mills, Mr. Shop, good evening.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you here today and discuss concept plan for what is 92 acres off of 112. We have it up on the site plan there. Maybe just walk you through where we see a potential opportunity and knowing that this is very preliminary, just looking for some feedback as to whether or not we're going in the right direction. Again, we have 92 acres. As it sits right now, we have it laid out with 115 lots, proposing a R5 zoning designation, which I believe has a minimum lot size of 13,000 square feet. As it's shown right now, the average lot size is 22,000 square feet. I think there's some opportunities, and staff had mentioned it as well, as doing some shrinking the density down and having some additional open space and some things that we can talk through. But when we started this, our goals, as we looked at the site, we have Franklin Savannah just to the east. Looking for an interconnected trail system, we think would be very important to be able to run through the site, trying to mitigate any trails in people's backyards and things like that, but really figure out a great way that can follow some of the conservation. Yeah. So we'll see it here in a little bit, some of the opportunities that we have for that trail system. There is an existing trails in Franklin, Savannah here. I think there's two of them. They both enter and exit on that one side. To be able to have some connectivity through there, I think that would make some sense. And we also wanted to make sure we minimize any of the impacts to environmentally sensitive areas on the subject site. There aren't many, but the ones that are there are kind of long and have formed over the years. So that is one of the hurdles, is we do have three crossings through wetlands that would have to happen. And when we see the actual site, we can look at those. I think they're, it's a hurdle that's surmountable, but it is something that we need to deal with. Also with there's a conservation easement actually. When the previous owner did a CSM, essentially they landlocked the balance of their property because they have a conservation easement running through the center, which no longer gave access to the parcel in behind. So we need to work through that hurdle. But I think the biggest one, and this is really why we wanted to get in front of you here this evening, is to get guidance on the comprehensive land use plan. Very appropriate. We're talking about parks before this. Much of this land is, the land use has it as recreational, and the comprehensive outdoor recreation shows us that they want to have this as a, let's see what kind of park here, regional park. So, obviously we're not proposing a park, we're proposing residential, so wanted to get some thoughts and feedback on those issues. Do we have another copy of the site plan? Perfect. So the lots as we have them, we have two access points. Access point here, access point down here. I'll start up to the top of page. We have what is a single loaded road, which isn't great, but as you can see, we have this little area here that we'll have to navigate through, as well as up here. Provided access to the adjacent property. Some of these lots, as you can see here, are very, very large. And what I think we would want to do is, if some of the bigger plan issues come into everybody's agreeable to them, we would look to maybe even shrink some of these lot sizes and have outlots over what we consider more environmentally sensitive areas, so the trees aren't cut and we can keep those open areas open. The crossing there, this hypothetically, this would be a phase, and then here would be a phase. Again, the layouts, we have some longer, almost bowling alley lots here that I think would also be a good opportunity to shrink down the size of those lots a little bit while having some open spaces that would be preserved in the back. Down in this area too, we have wetland crossing, and then we have one more right here. So again, there's not a lot of big natural features on the site, but we do have a handful of these crossings to contend with. Then the trail system right now, we're showing a trail that hooks up with Franklin Savannah here and rolls through. And we talked about doing another hookup over here, but then it would kind of go down that slough and then access to the property just down on the bottom of the page.
Ryan, too many Ryans and too many Woods.
Ryan Meadows?
Okay.
Yeah, so I know that's something working with Glenn to figure out where that access point is going to be. And we have a good opportunity right here as well for some kind of trail system. One of the things that we have run into issues in the past is if we had a trail, having a trail system that runs in somebody's backyard, try and avoid that. We always get pushback from the potential occupant. If it is in their backyard, we would want it set back a ways. For instance, let's say we had decrease the size of these lots, depth standpoint. In that instance, if we had some open space in between the back of the lot where the trail system was, we found that to be acceptable to buyers, and that would work. So I think there's a good opportunity to get it to connect here, and then somehow, some way, we would, based on the configuration, have it go up to here and then connect into this. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. Again, just wanted to get the general feedback is, do we think this is a good residential site, or is it something that you want to have stay as park?
Alderman Nelson.
There we go. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for coming here. I like it. I like the plan. I think it works. You do have some challenges, but you've already kind of talked about them. Just because we're talking openly, what do you estimate the average home price to be And I know the lots, some are small, some are big.
I would,
I'm sorry, let me interrupt. I didn't do my pre-concept review disclaimer, and so let me do that. First of all, I know you've done this before, but you understand that no decisions are being made. We're offering you individual opinions only about our concept of your concept, and whatever you glean from this in terms of favorable or on is your business, but you will not receive any votes tonight. So,
understood.
there you go.
Yeah. In the past, I would have said about 450, but I think that's light. I think based on some of the natural features of the subdivision of what is transpiring right across the street with the 79 lots, it's probably 500 to 525 on average for a lot home package. And I think, you know, one of the things that we've learned really just over the last few years, that if we have adequate open spaces and natural areas, the lot itself doesn't have to be a 30,000 square foot lot, but we can tighten that up, but we still need, you know, the similar amount of room just to have those open spaces and people have less yard to cut, so.
To continue, now there's been, I've got a few calls wondering about water down 112th Street. Would you be bringing water in from the north just to service that phases and coming south that way, or would it go down 112th?
Right up, so right out of Ryan Meadows and then just straight across. Is that accurate, Dan?
There's a public land installed out of Ryan Meadows.
Yeah. So Dan, you're saying right here?
Down
Right
the
there?
south.
There's a stub to bring it in directly there. And so that is part of the reason we also have another challenge, which sewer is up here. So we do have to receive an easement from the county to be able to get, because it's county park, to be able to run the sewer line down to the subject site. I think it makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't anticipate any issues there, but that is where we'd be getting sewer to. So this would notably be the first phase, and then we would work our way out the other side.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for being here. Yeah, I think on first look, it looks pretty good. My question was going to be the water and the sewer from there. You kind of answered that. Just a couple of questions for the city engineer. Glenn, what do you anticipate for 112th Street down the road? Is resurfacing going to work, or is that going to have to be totally reconstructed with all the traffic it's going to get?
We're thinking several years out, but we have been trying to throw numbers at doing something like a Putes, you know, the middle section of Putes. Someday that is in the works for 112th. We're talking about that potentially being in our traffic impact plan. So for the growth, not only that area, but also Oakwood Road going east and west, that needs to be improved too. So, you know, you're taking this small rural section of road and we're putting a lot of homes on it.
Right. What about lift stations? Are we going to be in any need of lift stations out there?
So we have the Ryan Creek Interceptor, and that's why it was built. So one of their struggles is to get an easement through the county park system. We've talked about maybe coupling that, put a trail on top of it, connecting with the Ryan Creek Trail that we've been talking about. But no, it should not need any lift stations. It should drain by gravity to the north to the RCI.
Okay. What about water towers?
As you know, we're getting ready to construct a water tower on Lover's Lane, and that should cover the entire western portion. Someday we will have a second water tower on that same site that we're putting the first tower, but ultimately those are the only towers that we would need on the west.
That'll take care of this area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
It's reflex. Alderwoman Hanneman.
This evening, I appreciate it. My main comment is I'm a little itchy about the number of cul-de-sacs. And you may have heard that in previous presentations, either with yourself or other developers. But we've got, 4 in there? And that's always a concern for our Department of Public Works. They cost extra time and money to maintain, and they're difficult. I understand the challenges with the wetlands in this particular property, so I see why it's laid out the way that it is. Especially that big cul-de-sac in the, that just seems really, it might be really tough to maintain, but I would defer to the city engineer and DPW on that.
And I can say from our standpoint, we don't like them either because they're not all that cost effective. And we had looked and continue to do so at essentially connecting this here, so that would mitigate the need for at least one. We do run into some issues as we cross wetlands and things like that. So we're trying to balance it with minimizing any environmental impact and need for the ability to deviate from the existing plan, at the same point trying to have a good land plan. That's something that we can try and get some different renditions on. This one right here. Yeah, and we had a couple of renditions of that. We've only probably done this 20 times on how we laid it out, so we can go back and dust them off and see what we have. But that's something that could make some sense.
Same thing on the cul-de-sac comment. I thought we had a plan report that kind of recommended against this. I believe there were a lot of, that this wasn't part of the master plan. And we seem to be, as a municipality, kind of going down two tracks at the same time. So we just had and hired consultants to look at a park plan. We're saying we need this property for a community park. We're missing a community park. And now we're looking at developing it. So I know that the theory is that bring in development and, your tax base is supposed to go down. But when you put in the amount of residential homes, I think we're putting a huge burden on our taxpayers for the schools. I know that I've heard that school district shouldn't be our concern, but they are our taxpayers. And with every residential home that comes in, there's more need for schools. And that's reflected in our quite large percentage of our tax bill already. So I've seen this happen in District 3, where we had a master plan and then we diverted from it. And there's some things that have been done, like putting residential on our most major highway and a stormwater basin. So now that opportunity for business development is gone. And now I see another sort of change to the years and years of planning, just like that. So you show a plan to the public, and you ask for public input, and they tell you what they want, and then it can change just like that overnight. We've looked at a lot of residential development. The area has residential development scattered all over it. That area is going to need a park. The whole city is going to need a park. I guess my question to maybe the planning staff or whoever is working on the future park plan, if not there for the community park that's been already identified, what is the future of that area to have a park, and what lands are available for acquisition to replace that, especially because it's right next to a state natural area, which would be just a huge boom and amenity for the city of Franklin to have such a feature. So it's not my district, but I do see some drawbacks hearing from the master plan and giving up something that our community has been asking us for quite some time.
Alderman Nelson.
Well, I think for some of those reasons, that's what makes it desirable. I mean, if I'm going to look to build a $500,000 north house and I can have a backyard that's all green space, I'm probably going to spend that or north of there. And I understand, Mr. Mills, you just talked about kind of going into the phases. Just, again, off the cuff, you're the developer, you're the expert in this, this is how you make a living. How is the demand right now? Is it still very strong for these high-end single-family areas?
It is, yeah. I mean, the 79 lots that we have across the street, I think we've sold 67 of them. So it hasn't slowed down. The decrease in lumber has helped quite a bit. We haven't seen all of that trickle down through the lumber yards yet. So those are things that, we track pretty closely to make sure during COVID, things got really unaffordable, even from us from a construction standpoint with where costs for raw supplies went, but it hasn't tempered the demand side of it. So we anticipate it continuing.
Thank you.
And my apologies to Alderman Barber. He's been patiently pushing his button.
It's just
And I keep
switching.
well, it's called old man shakes, and he doesn't have my due. Alderman Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, Alderman Barber.
Typically on a 22,000 square foot lot, what size house would be? Just, I know it varies,
Yeah.
but what typically would that be in square footage for the home?
I think on average, if we're looking at a ranch, what I think would go in here, you're probably a 2,200 square foot ranch. So that's the biggest footprint from a two-story. It's maybe 1,500 square feet. So if it's a traditional two-story, you've got a 3,000 square foot house. I think we do up to 3,700 square feet. So we have some plans that are a little bit bigger. But if you use that 2,200 to even 2,500 at about the top end, that'd be about as big of a ranch as we would see in as big of a footprint.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go forth and
Appreciate the feedback.
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, G10 needs a little conversation because as I usually do, I'm going to Shanghai this a little bit. There's a request this is about naming the area of TID 8 so that those who are going to be built, thanks, sir. Those who are going to be building facilities there want to start marketing it and they want to put a name to it. The commonly used name here in the city has been Corporate Park, but the city attorney reminds me that he and others and he had came up with the name. No, San Martino, yeah. You could go either way, either Gateway Corporate Park or Corporate Gateway Park. At any rate, that takes advantage of the location southeast corner of Milwaukee County, right on I-94, and it differentiates us from the Oak Creek Corporate Park and several others. But I'm not carrying water. Comments? So nobody heard that. Alderman Hanneman, we'll do it again.
I move to adopt the name Gateway Corporate Park for the development currently known as Area D.
Second.
Alderman Nelson.
My only concern or a concern I have with the naming of that is Gateway is a big Kenosha thing. And that's kind of a little bit of a, I mean, everything is like, where's Gateway Tech? Well, it's Kenosha. I mean, it's Gateway. When you hear Gateway, that's just my 2 cents for that. But I believe it should be named something, but I'm not, that's the way we want to go with it. It's fine. I'm just saying when I hear Gateway, I'm thinking the Kenosha thing. That's all I got.
Alderman Barber.
Is there a gateway in Oak Creek as well? Over on 27th?
Ms. Berg, do we need to do this tonight? No. So we can spend 2 weeks and we can assign you to go look for gateways?
I was just gonna look it up on my phone. Like Gateway to Milwaukee.
That's at the airport though, yeah.
Then I'll rescind my motion, move to table for 2 weeks.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? We didn't do that right, but I don't care. Motion is tabled.
I have to.
G12 is emergent, this is on no page number, emergency repair and replacement of a 54-inch culvert, Mr. City Engineer. G11, did I miss one? I must have missed one because G11 comes after G10.
Very important item. I wish you.
Ms. Berg has her annual Economic Development Report. This will be a summary report, though.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Hmm? Okay. Yes, of course. We had to pass out some materials, so no worries. Okay. So thank you very much for giving me time on your agenda this evening. I will do my best to be brief. And part of being brief means I'm giving you some supporting documentation to underscore the verbal report that I'm giving you this evening. My plan is to, sometime in the fourth quarter, bring back a formal written report that will have a lot of the same information reflected in it, but this is kind of the just get it done verbal report so that all of you have an idea of where economic development is going in the city of Franklin, and to provide you with an opportunity to give me some feedback so that when I do provide you with the report, it will reflect the types of information that you most want to see in the report. Before I get going, I would like to acknowledge that 2 members of the Economic Development Commission are here this evening. We have Alderman Mike Barber, and we have Barbara Waisner, who also serves on the EDC. So thank you for being here. And I also want to preface this report by saying that none of this work happens in a vacuum. We really, as staff, are very collaborative and work very well together, from Director of Administration Peggy Stino to City Engineer Glenn Morrow, Finance Director Paul Rotzenberg, Clerk Sandy Wesolowski, Attorney Jesse Wesolowski, and Heath Eddy, Planning Manager, who left, as well as Scott Satula, the Health Department. It really kind of goes all across the board. But for the most part, there is a core group of people who focus on development work in the city. And if I didn't have this collaborative team, none of the things that we're about to talk about would happen. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank all of the people who make it possible to have a good economic development program here in the city of Franklin. So given that, I'd like to start with giving you a bit of an overview of some of the things that have happened in the last couple of years. As you may recall, the first formal report took place approximately 1 year after I started. So it went from June of 18 to June of 19. And then we had the pandemic in there. So it's going to be a biannual report this year. But I wanted to point out a number of things that have been happening on a macro level. First, I have just recently recertified my certified economic development finance, my certified economic developer status with the International Economic Development Council, as well as my economic development finance professional certification with the National Development Council. And these are both on a 3-year renewal schedule and require ongoing education and other types of activities in order to recertify. So I'm good to go again for another 3 years. Some other things that have been somewhat notable, despite the pandemic, many of the major economic development organizations throughout the region, including M7, which is Milwaukee 7, covers the 7-county region in southeastern Wisconsin, NIOP, which is an industrial real estate development association that is international, but we have a chapter here in Wisconsin. The Mid-America Economic Development Council, CARW, Commercial Association of Real Estate, Wisconsin, the Gateway to Milwaukee, Ellers, Wisconsin Economic Development Association, Wisconsin Real Estate for Women, the South Suburban Chamber, et cetera, and so forth. So there's always been a lot of interaction and activity with those groups to ensure that Franklin continues to be a stakeholder and has a high presence in the minds of the folks who can steer good development our way and can ensure that Franklin has a place at the right tables for economic development. A couple of things that have happened in the last couple of years that I took advantage of. One was I attended CARW's Next Gen class, which is typically for young professionals who are just a few years into their career and are ready to get to the next level. But me, being new to Wisconsin, they made an exception and allowed this old lady to participate, and I was definitely the grandmother of the class. But it's turned into a really wonderful opportunity to touch young professionals who are hungry and passionate and are excited and eager to learn and want to know all about Franklin. And so I've been able to leverage that opportunity. And this year I was able to give back and was part of the economic development panel for this year's CARW Next Gen class. I also was a speaker at a couple of virtual networking events through Midwest Real Estate. And that also resulted in some additional exposure for the city. I'm going to skip quite a few things on page 1. But before I do, I promised Ola, who is the representative for the South Suburban Chamber of Commerce, that I would remind everyone that on Saturday, the 28th, is the 20th, well, it's in my report, is the 20th anniversary of the chamber, and we are, the Economic Development Department is a sponsor for that event, actually the City of Franklin, along with Oak Creek, who is also a sponsor, and with that sponsorship is 8 complimentary tickets to attend the event. And I know Alderwoman Henneman, you already bought tickets for your family, but I'm going to start throwing those out for department heads. So if you have an interest in going, please let me know. On page 2, just some static information about the city. We are the 3rd largest ranking in assessed value in Milwaukee County. We had a 4.8% growth. And flipping to page 3, our tax levy is also putting us in the 3rd place in Milwaukee County for municipalities. And I think that can be attributed in part to the fact that we have some really solid taxpayers here in the city, starting with Northwest Mutual, Ascension, Wisconsin, Aurora Healthcare. TI Investors, that's the Statesman's apartment buildings. And so those combined bring 7.38% of our total assessed value to the city. On page 5 is again our largest employers, and they pretty much stay the same from year to year. They go up, they go down a little bit. With the pandemic, we saw some of these companies lose some people, but as you know, workforce continues to be a huge challenge, and as they ramp up, they will be wanting to fill these positions back up again. On page 6, our equated tax base has continued to go up nicely over the last several years. And in 2019, it was 4.3 billion. In 2020, it was 4.6 billion. And in 2021, it is 4.9 billion. So we're basically up 227 million from 2019 to 2020. So that's a nice bump. In the equated value by class, you'll see that we have 74% residential. And if you look on the wall here behind me, we've got a goal of 70-30. I always keep that in the back of my mind, but as you saw with the presentation from Bear Development, we continue to see more opportunities for residential development, which means there is more, it makes it a stronger goal for me to continue to bring more commercial development into the city.
Does the amount of residential that's nearly 1,000 due to our 70-30 goal of business development?
Can you repeat that, please?
What does the residential development of nearly 1,000 do for our goal of 70-30 business versus residential development? Put us.
I haven't ground those numbers yet, but I would imagine that it's going to shift more towards the residential, except for the fact that when I get a little farther into the report, there are a number of significant probable developments that should have some announcements within the next 3 to 6 months that I believe are going to help balance that out a little bit. The thing about economic development is you need to have all of the elements in place in order to have a robust, healthy community. And so for all of the residential development that's happening, it's because we are increasing the number of amenity businesses, service, commercial, retail, tourism, and people want to live in a community that has those types of amenities. But the flip side of that is decision makers for large commercial businesses also want to put their families into those communities. And so I think that there's a yin and yang and a balance that will happen, and that at any point in time you might see one side or the other a little stronger than we would like, but I think it will all balance out in the wash. It's just a matter of careful long-term planning.
I thought that was the goal of our master plan, which we've changed on several occasions. And the problem comes where if you don't have the land for the business development because it's taken up by residential, it's hard to have that balance out. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. We have to have a place for the businesses to be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely agree. And all of the various concept reviews that have happened recently and the proposals for residential development are not areas that I am looking to try to place any type of significant non-residential development. So far we haven't had any conflicts in that regard, but I do participate with the planning department on their weekly staff meetings and make sure that I'm familiar with what they're working on, that they're familiar with what I'm working on, and that we collaborate so that we don't end up with those types of conflicts. Because you're right, land is a priceless commodity, and when it's gone, it's gone. So we do have to be very careful.
And on the flip side of that is where that residential goes and what that does to our school districts. So, you know, we have areas over on 27th Street which would send kids to a different school district, but yet that's own business. So maybe part of this whole goal is for you in the business development and where we're going to place people is looking at, do we need to amend that master plan? Because otherwise we're going to load up city with residential, maybe in the wrong location, put a heavy burden on us, and then not have the proper land in the other areas.
There is quite a bit of discussion when we get to the upper level and we're visioning, and there's a lot of talk about the master plan and what the future holds is in terms of what needs to be addressed there. So it's definitely on our radar screen.
Good. Changes that probably should come with that.
Okay, so moving on, I'll just touch some of these things really lightly. So you'll see that the net new construction has increased significantly, and in this chart, 2020 was not a complete year. We now know that from 2019 to 2020, we saw an $81 million bump in net new construction, which is pretty remarkable given the pandemic. And you can see that reflected in the number of new businesses that came in. This is just for 2020 alone. And you'll recognize several of these as projects that have come through the council chambers in recent times. On page 10, I'm just doing for comparison. Frequently people say we don't have that many restaurants here in the city, or we don't have that much to do. And so I just wanted to show the full boat of the different types of places that you can eat and the things that you can do, and including our 16 city parks with 172 acres, and how these new businesses that came in 2020 fit into that bigger picture as well. And then just briefly, I had a responsibility for administration of the Tourism Commission through early 2021. In the time that I was in that role, we worked to execute a naming rights agreement with Rock Ventures for the Milkmen Stadium. Responded to 132 visitors guide requests, and I have given you each a copy of the visitors guide. The back cover was dedicated for Franklin, as well as an article on the inside. So I just wanted you to see those bits of promotional materials. We successfully put out the gateway signs with a big assist and lots of help from the city manager and the DPW. We recently got our banners put up and in place. We have the City Hall sign out front. The website was completed, and the City of Oak Creek Tourism, as well as Oak Creek Economic Development and me representing Economic Development and Tourism, we're getting together with the chamber and talking about how we were going to take advantage of the DNC and the Ryder Cup, and then of course the pandemic happened. But that work did still take place, that collaboration did happen, and so I wanted to share that with you and make sure that you were aware of it. The other commission that I administer is the Economic Development Commission. I want to give you a save the date on your calendar, October 14th at Tuckaway. I'm about 99% close to being able to announce a keynote speaker, and I'm pretty excited about it. So if you get an email from me in the next couple of days, you'll know what that's all about. But do save the date for October 14th. Yes, yes, absolutely. So the EDC has, in the last year or so, taken a close look at what their role should be for economic development in the city of Franklin. And so to that end, we have a draft update for the municipal code that they're currently reviewing and is under consideration that may come before you for a request for approval. They considered taking on a survey of the development community in the Southeast Wisconsin region, but decided that they might take a different approach to the survey, and so that's been tabled. But again, that was work that happened. They did recommend, and then council approved, a series of ads through Site Selection magazine. And a little farther in the report, you will see the latest one, which was a 6-page spread. The Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, New North, which is like M7 in another part of the state of Wisconsin, and some others, as well as the city of Franklin, all contributed to that section in Site Selection Magazine. And the EDC is planning on having Heartland Real Estate Magazine and Expansion Magazine both have quarter-page ads for Franklin Economic Development. And we'll see how that goes. We're kind of testing the waters. I have told the EDC that I would really like them to help put together a robust marketing plan for the city that fits our budget. And as part of that, we being the development staff, department heads here at the city, put together a presentation to the EDC so they understood how deal flow happened. And that is one of the pieces that was handed out for you this evening, just so you could see. And I expect that we'll probably be able to use that for some other things going forward. I've also started bringing in some of our collaborating stakeholders like SBA and M7 to provide presentations so that the EDC has an understanding of what their role is in the bigger role of economic development, so that they have the knowledge to be ambassadors for economic development when they're out and about and they bump into a CEO or somebody who's got some issue with the business. They can say, hey, SBA has 7A grants. I learned about that through the Economic Development Commission. So right now we're kind of laying some groundwork. And I expect that sometime in the first quarter of 2022, I will be back with the EDC to talk about some of the choices that they want to make going forward and how they want to support the city's economic development efforts.
Thank you. And if I could just interrupt on the Site Selection Magazine bullet point, do you have any metrics back on that from the ads that we ran last year? If that was very effective, if we got some leads off of that?
I 2 leads I got off of that, and neither one of them converted. But I know that people are reading it because everybody who wants to provide every tool for economic development to every municipality all have my number. So I've gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of chatter, and I've had people comment that they've seen it, but I don't have any solid metrics to it. That would be one of the things that I'd want the EDC to consider. Do you feel that having that skin in the game and making that effort to raise awareness of Franklin as a place to do business, is it worth that money? I don't have the answer to that today, but hopefully we'll find out. So under promotion and marketing, and I'm really sorry, audience, that you can't see this. Let me see if I can make it a little bigger. Okay. There's a little better. A couple of notable things that have happened. Car W brought a networking event to Franklin. It was at the Rock Snow Park, and it was a bunch of adults going tubing. And everyone had an absolute wonderful time. A lot of folks didn't know that that was Franklin. They didn't know that they were at the highest elevation in all of Milwaukee County. So it was a great opportunity to talk a little bit about all of the great things that are happening in Franklin. And we had our concept maps up for a couple of our TIDs and our parks. And so it was a great opportunity to expose people to Franklin who hadn't been here before. And then recently, NIOP brought a showcase, their second showcase to Franklin. The first one was right after the Milkmen Stadium was completed. And they hadn't even played any games there yet. And then this one was at the Conservancy to talk about that kind of development. And then we went over to the stadium and we took in a Milkmen game. And that was a really great opportunity as well. In late 2018, we won the Wisconsin Economic Development Association's annual CEDA, Community and Economic Development Award, for our public-private partnership with Rock Ventures. And so that was another coup for us to talk about things that are happening in Franklin. And a couple of notable events that tie directly into the new businesses that have been coming in. We had Habitat Restore opened, Velo Village had their groundbreaking, and S&C had their groundbreaking. And I included in the a little farther in the information the article that went into the chamber newsletter. So I've been trying to give them a an article for their newsletter every month, and that was in there a couple months ago. This is a new proximity map that I've been using in some of the various advertising and marketing opportunities, which I really like because it shows all of the airports, it shows a tri-state region, it shows Lake Michigan, and it shows that we are smack dab in the center of it all. The bullet points on the right are just some of the talking points that I use when I am trying to address a new audience. And this is the site selection section that I had referred to earlier, where starts off with just in general about Wisconsin, and then WEDC had their ad, and then New North had their ad, and there's our ad. And I followed the lead of the WEDC, which basically said, you're not going to have any nature issues happening with tornadoes and hurricanes and everything else. And so I played off of the WEDC's approach. And I really like that low on natural disaster, high on natural beauty. Okay, wrapping it up. All right, prospects. This is just kind of list information. These are the folks that I spent a significant amount of time with. There's a lot of inquiries that come in. Multifamily, we're getting a lot of. Senior development, we're getting a lot of. But these are the types of prospects that I tend to spend more time and more follow-up and provide more concierge level of service. And there are a number of different people in the development world in Southeast Wisconsin that I have interacted with on a significant level. And getting into TID work, in my first 2 years here, we created TIDs 6, 7, and 8, amended TIDs 5 and 6, and got significantly down the road on creating TID 9. So we have a lot of TID development happening. Yeah, no, I wasn't serious. No. Unless, of course, we got a great project, right? But okay, so TID 4 is now TID 8. I'm calling it Corporate Park until we know any different. This map is kind of interesting because every one of those blue boxes, which are not to scale, represents a developer who has a serious proposal. And if all of these come to fruition, it's over 2 million square feet. I would like to point out in the upper right corner, the southeast corner, the two boxes on the right, those two, those might become announcements fairly soon. This is the county's property. We are in the process, Glenn and I, of working with Rupert and Milky to try to figure out if we can do a regional stormwater pond there, and if not, we're going to have to look at some other area within the park to handle the Hickory Street and Elm Road runoff. So we're working through some of these issues. We've got about 24 million more in expenses that we anticipate happening in the park for public infrastructure, and they're all going to be predicated on the developments as they happen. So this park is definitely being put together on the come, and we as staff find ourselves in the role of playing master developer because there is no public control over these properties. And so a master developer really wasn't able to come forward and do what we wanted them to do. So that's what we're doing as staff. The next page is just to show you, we had the conceptual site map updated. to remove some of the secondary roadways to demonstrate that the artificially exempt pond in the southeast corner has been filled, and that Elm Road and Hickory Street are soon to be redone, and the CSM reflecting West Aspen and South Birch Street. TIDS 5 and 7, as you know, there is now a proposed hotel development. I've been working closely with Anderson Real Estate Group, Rachel Olson, who is representing this red building right here, which is a small retail parcel owned by Zimmerman that could have an 11,000 square foot retail or small commercial building on it. And that's where the hotel is going to go. And she is also working on identifying someone in the hospitality industry to do a brew pub or a restaurant or a wine bar or something along those lines. So we keep chasing prospects there, trying to stimulate some development in Ballpark Commons. On the south side of Rawson, you've got TID 7, and Velo Village is, as you know, doing very, very well with their development. And Lex Golf has broken ground. Yes, thank you. TID 6, you heard from SR a little bit ago about how the lots are selling very fast in the Ryan Meadows subdivision. And the Loomis Business Park, we recently had this map updated as well to show what's available and what's not. And so everything in the orange is taken and everything in the purple is still available. And so using this map, it becomes a lot easier to show prospects where they might be able to locate and how they might be able to customize their project in this space. Yes, Copart is under construction. And then 2022 and beyond. This is where I would be open to your feedback. Keep in mind, I am a department of one. I do all my own administration, my own minutes, my own agendas. I am blessed to have a little assistance from Gail, who is the administrative assistant for the planning department. So I try to be realistic when I set my goals to make it things that I can achieve. But it is a capacity issue for me. And so please keep that in mind when you have ideas that you'd like to have me implement in the future. But I'm here if you have any questions for me.
Alderman Nelson.
Kelly, thank you very much for the work. Excellent. Are you tracking businesses that leave Franklin? And it's a two-part question. So are you tracking them, and are you having discussions as to why these businesses would leave our city?
So the short answer is no, and it's not because I don't want to. It's because I often don't know that they've left until somebody new comes in with a zoning request, zoning application, or something along those lines. In particular, like in the business park where you have buildings that are 100,000 square feet plus and they have multi-tenants, a lot of times the property managers won't tell me what I want to know. They won't tell me when people have left or when people have come. So it is a huge challenge to try to track that sort of thing. And I'm open for suggestions for how to do it. But on the flip side of that also, businesses don't leave Franklin. They really don't. I'm hard pressed to find any businesses off the top of my head that have created benefit for our local economy that have left. I do think that the pandemic, the economic impact from the pandemic is going to create fallout in Franklin. I'm confident that when business picks up and the small businesses that hung on and they may have gotten some grants and loans and they've made it through, they will not have the capacity to meet the demand. And I think you're going to see some trend towards small business closings once the economy has recovered.
And, sorry, go ahead.
I saw this in 2001 when we had a recession early on in 2000s. And the same thing happened, only that hit specifically in the tool and die industry. And everybody went, whew, we all made it through. And then they started dropping like flies because they just didn't have the reserves to pick up and meet the demand.
We
So-
have the same issue, Alderman, that many others have, but it's magnified for us. We don't have employees. We don't have employees in our restaurants. We don't have employees in our service economy. We certainly don't have them in our manufacturing and other industrial businesses. We just don't have employees here. I was in a popular restaurant on Sunday for breakfast, as I usually do, and half the tables were empty, not because he didn't have the customers, because he didn't have the servers to do it. So we as leaders of the community need to continue to talk up, get your kids to go apply for a job, because they're out there and they're paying pretty darn good these days. So that's something we can all do to help the situation.
Mm-hmm. And if I were to give predictions, our businesses are screaming for workforce, just like everybody. It's a global problem. It's certainly not unique to Franklin. But without public transportation and with a lack of people who live in Franklin who can take these jobs at these companies, we definitely have a mismatch problem. And I think that within the next couple of years, you're going to see tremendous pressure to create affordable living communities. And when I say that, I'm talking about folks who are entry level in public service and public safety, teachers, someone who gets their first job out of college. These are people who are economically situated high enough that they get no assistance for anything, but they're just starting off and they really can't afford a majority of what's available in Franklin. And what is affordable in Franklin goes fast and it doesn't free up. So I think you're going to see a lot of pressure to look at alternatives in residential development in the next couple of years. And I also think that you're going to see more of a push for some type of alternative transportation, whether that's going to be bus service or something else. But those are a couple of issues that I think we're definitely going to be grappling with in the next couple of years as we try to support the existing businesses here in Franklin.
Other questions? Okay, Kelly, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Let's try to soldier through here. G12 is emergency repair replacement of 54-inch culvert on 68th Street. Oh, wait a minute, which one? Mr. City Engineer.
That Assistant City Engineer Tyler Bionlick has provided. So short story is there was a 12-inch water main that blew, created a really big mess on 68th Street. It was north of Christine Rasky Park, south of Wild Creek or something. We've gone through some analysis past few days. It looks like we would propose that you provide us to enter contracts to get this fixed when we can. Municipal Contractor Sealing Products is going to do a sprayer application, so it's structural. They go in and they spray this fiber reinforced concrete around the pipe. The situation was the water department caused a lot of damage, but once we got in and looked at the pipe was in bad shape. So we need to fix the pipe, and then we're going to hold the water department to fix all the mess that it created. So between the water department and so the water department will be spending more or less around $28,500, and we think the highway department cost will be about $36,300. This exceeds the $25,000 limit for requiring public bidding. Board of Public Works has already discussed this project and declared it an emergency project, and we need to proceed when we can. We just don't know exactly how much right now, but we need to spend roughly $36,300 from the highway department, and we're taking it out of maintenance funds. And I will say that our maintenance funds was pretty bare, and so we're going to really be tight the rest of the year. So
So, Paul, the appropriation's coming out of a line item that doesn't support it?
Existing highway department fund, I think they're really close. Got $1 million budget.
So we don't need a budget?
No new.
Crazy. Is this something eligible for insurance claim?
That was brought up in the water department, so we will talk to the administration office tomorrow about that. We've never done one for this kind of defect, but that was brought up and might be a possibility.
Okay. The motion is for the $36,000 solution.
Yes.
There's a resolution.
There is a resolution.
And a handout.
I don't have that with me, but
Tell you what, let's do this the lazy man's way. Is there a motion to approve the resolution and the expenditure of about approximately $36,000? Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Let the record reflect.
Thank you.
Alderman Nelson had vacated his seat at 9:09 and is not here for the vote. Okay. All right, Jim. G13, an ordinance to amend ordinance 2024-53 to transfer $38,000 from information non-service to non-services, information services non-personnel to personnel costs. Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Okay. Madam Clerk, hold on. 1, 2, okay, that's all right. If we takes 4 votes, folks. Madam Clerk.
Alderman Mayor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Wilhelm. Aye. Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Motion carries 4 ayes, no noes, 1 absent, no abstentions. Okay, Ann. Okay, Jim. The next item is a fun one. G14, authorization to hire a full-time desktop and user support administrator to replace the current on-premise IT support contractor. We want to go right to the bottom line. Having an employee saves us 50, how many thousand? 153,000?
Approximately 51,000.
That was close.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Again, Alderman Wilson is not with us. G15 is considered, good job, Jim. Nice presentation. That's probably the
Best
shortest
one tonight.
and the shortest one he's ever given. G15 is consideration of a resolution adopting City of Franklin Code of Conduct. This is just on for information purposes. We should be ready for what, next meeting?
We will, but I could just maybe explain real quick, 2 minutes.
Yep.
I did meet with Alderman Mayer. He had some excellent selections with, suggestions with regards to the social media section. That would be on page 2 of the Code of Conduct, which is the 3rd page in the packet. And there's also a Code of Conduct section in the rules, and that's on page 5 of the rules, section 9, social media. The section that was added, so basically that section was more than doubled, and the section that was added were pieces of information that were throughout the document that we have all talked about that were important, but Alderman Mayer just wanted to make sure that we didn't forget that social media, we should all live by those same rules and guidance, and those were the suggestions. He did have a number of other clarifications. Some places in the rules and conduct, it wasn't clear on when we said members, who that was, things like that. And we went through that document, and there were a couple other, I'd say, word choice type suggestions. Did I miss anything? And those are all added. And I did talk to the city attorney last Friday. He has a couple follow-ups, and we do know there were some questions last time that we're going to get all wrapped up for the next meeting.
Alderman Wilhelm.
Allowed to have discussion on the 7th and tweak this in its final form, or is it going to be denied? And I guess that isn't getting answered. So the question that I have is on page 4 under section 3 for, this is something new that would further limit the aldermanic powers. Currently, the ordinance says 2 council members are required to call a special meeting, but as far as agenda items, they go to the clerk. In relation to this item, it would require 2 council members to put an item on the agenda. So
I'm going to address that. That's been in the document since before it was written this time around. That's been in the document since 1974. At some point, got to move on. You know, every time you come back with 6 or 7 other changes, I'm done.
I was interrupted, so this item is not something that was in there. What you're referring to, Mayor, is the language that's in the municipal code that does require 2 aldermen to call a special meeting. This one would require 2 aldermen to put the item on the agenda. It's been very difficult throughout the process to be able to bring these items up. And each time we try to, we're told we need to just move on. So I'm not sure how, if I cannot get my concerns addressed and the limitations that are more restrictive on the councils, I will not be supporting the document. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, this will be on the next agenda. And Alderman Nelson has returned at, what is that, 17 after. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to G17, which is boards, which is committee of the whole. There is no action to be taken on wholesale water supply. There is the Keeney Architects, Public Works and Fire was information only, as was the discussion of the awareness campaign for PPI. Is that correct? Anybody have a different? Alderman Mayor.
Where does item B, the needs assessment, DPW and fire department, where does that go from there? What's next?
Madam Director of Administration.
So the study is ongoing right now. Staff is preparing a capital improvement plan in the 2022 budget, and there will be recommendations to carry forward a design phase in 2023. And if that moves forward, then it would be for construction 24-25 is what the preliminary plans look like.
Okay. Will we get a chance to provide any more input? I mean, that was the first we saw it last night, and actually it'd be nice to have the documents in our hand before that, because then we could generate some questions ahead of time rather than having it all fresh. So yeah, if we have a chance to provide input and get the information ahead of time, would be great.
Yeah, we've been, as staff, been providing input, and that was really our first look at seeing any kind of products. So we're very early in the process.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what that meeting was for, is really just to get a kickoff. This company, Cooney Architects, is very interactive, and they will want to come forward to the council as well as other stakeholder groups in the community throughout the process. So there will be no shortage of opportunities to provide feedback and get input and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to do G16 because that's dependent on G18. G20, perhaps we can dispense with. The notice of claim, Attorney Gatsky, the league insurer recommends denial, and they have withdrawn their claim anyway. Is there a motion to deny? Okay. We'll do Alderman Barber. He's going to win. Alderman Barber, Alderman Mayor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. What else can we do here? Let's do Sam's. We got to go into closed session. G19. Probably need to go to closed. All right. Item H1, licenses, Alderman Nelson. Or Alderman Hanneman? Someone? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item I, everything. Is there a motion approving the following city vouchers with an ending date of August 12th, 2021, the amount of $2,553,210.19, and payroll dated August 13th, 2021, in the amount of $427,687.75, and payments of the various payroll deductions in the amount of $242,298.24, plus city matching payments. An estimated payroll for August 17th, estimated $415,000, payments of various payroll deductions, estimated at $555,000, plus city matching payments and property tax disbursements, with an ending date of August 13th, 2021, the amount of $3,190,281.78, and payments to the bond trust services in the amount of $639,686.25, and approval to release library vouchers not to exceed $20,000.
So move.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Alderman Barber. Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderman Mayor.
Aye.
Motion carries, 5 ayes, no noes, no absence, no abstentions. With that, we move back to G18. Is there a motion to enter closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stat 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel for common counsel who is rendering advice concerning strategy adopted by the body with respect to subject litigation and re-enter open session, same place thereafter, to act on such matters discussed therein as it deems appropriate.
So move.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Alderman Mayor.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderman Barber. Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Motion carries, 5 ayes, no noes, no absent, no abstentions. We are in closed session. I'm sorry, G18. Mr. City Attorney.
Potential motion, actually one of two potential motions, would be a motion to approve a settlement agreement and mutual release by and between Sam's Real Estate Business Trust and the City of Franklin in the form and content as presented to the Common Council at its meeting on August 17, 2021, and to authorize Attorney Nathan J. Bayer to execute and deliver same, subject to Common Council approval of the proposed ordinance to amend the budget within item G16 of the August 17, 2021 council meeting agenda packet.
Is there a second? Is there a motion? Sorry. Sorry. I'm demoting. Alderman Barber, who's the second?
Second.
All those in favor of that motion, by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Same motion, substitute.
Proposed potential motion to be a motion to approve a settlement agreement and mutual release by and between Walmart Real Estate Business Trust and the City of Franklin in the form and content as presented to the Common Council at its meeting on August 17, 2021, and to authorize Attorney Nathan J. Bayer to execute and deliver same, conditioned upon approval of a proposed potential budget amendment ordinance, which is within item G16 of the August 17, 2021 council meeting agenda packet.
Is there a motion?
Second.
It's a trend, Barbara and Hanneman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We move back to G16. Is there a motion adopting an ordinance to amend ordinance 2453, adopting 2021 annual budgets, provide $10,000 of appropriation for tax refunds on assessment challenges.
I move to adopt the ordinance.
And we're just reversing Hanneman and Barber. Madam Clerk.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderman Mayor.
Aye.
Motion carries, 5 ayes, no noes, no absent, no abstentions. With that, we move to G19. Do we need to go closed? Do we want to go to closed? Okay. Is there a motion to enter closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stat 19851E for market competition bargaining reasons to deliberate and consider terms relating to a tax incremental District 8 agreement between the City of Franklin, JHB Properties LLC, and ZS Enterprises LLC, spec and/or commercial buildings, mixed-use development, and a development agreement for JHB Properties LLC, ZZ Enterprises LLC, specs and/or commercial buildings, mixed-use development, public improvements, and the investing of public funds and governmental actions relating thereto, and to affect such development, including the terms and provisions of the development agreements for the development of the property located at the south side of West Elm Road, approximately a 3,500 block area, where West Elm Road to be extended to the west, consisting of approximately 79.79 acres, and re-enter open session at the same place thereafter to act on such matters discussed therein as it deems appropriate. Somebody say so.
So moved.
We'll do Nelson and Hanneman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'll roll call, sorry.
Alderman Nelson.
Aye.
Alderman Barber.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hanneman.
Aye.
Alderwoman Wilhelm.
Aye.
Alderman Mayor.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're in closed session.
Recording stopped.
Developments that there will be a motion to adopt a resolution to rescind resolution number 2020-7680, a resolution authorizing certain officials to execute a tax incremental district number 8 development agreement and a development agreement for tax incremental district number 8 related public improvements between the City of Franklin, JHB Properties LLC, and ZS Enterprises LLC, spec and/or commercial buildings, mixed-use development, at its meeting on September 17th, 2020, or I'm sorry, September 21st, 2021.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Recording stopped.